Hey, it's Noelle Bloom here, and welcome to Bloom TV. You're in the right place if you want to create a business that makes a difference and live a fabulous life. Do you struggle with bringing the same level of dedication to your romantic relationships as you do your business? For many of us, starting, growing, and scaling a business takes a lot of time and energy. And if we're not careful, our relationships can take a turn for the worse. So maybe you feel like your partner isn't as supportive as you want them to be. Or maybe you have a secret hint that your partner resents your business. If you've experienced any of that or feel that way, you are gonna love today's episode because I'm gonna sit down and talk with Dr. Jenev Caddell. She's a psychologist and author who helps high performers and entrepreneurs strengthen their relationships so that they can be more powerful and reach their highest potential and make a bigger impact in the world. So she's going to share some powerful strategies on how you can turn your partner into your biggest asset in business. So if you value your relationship, if you want to make it stronger so you can show up more present in your business and in your life, you're just going to love this conversation. And we're going to dive deep into the dynamic of running a business and the challenges that we face when also trying to nurture our relationships. I think you're really going to love this one. So let's dive in. Jenev, thank you so much for joining me today on Bloom TV. I'm so excited to talk to you because I think that as business women or business professionals in general, it can be hard to bring that same level of dedication and attention that we do to our businesses to our relationships. And so I'd love to get started by hearing how you got started in your business.
Sure. Well, I'm just thrilled to be here, Noelle. Thank you so much for having me. So I got started sort of as a side hustle, so to speak. It was really just a private practice doing psychotherapy when I had a full-time job, and I did that for a few years and then went full-time in that and then sort of expanded out from there, having moved from New York City to New Hampshire and sort of branched out to the online world where I, expanded my services to coaching, and I've done some teaching and other things like that. But, I've always had this sort of, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit, so to speak, and just, having come from people who had their own businesses, it was always, and feeling the constrictions of many traditional jobs. It was something I always knew I had to do, and here I am.
Yeah. So what made you want to start with relationships or actually get into that type of line of work?
It's funny because it was like the furthest thing that I ever wanted to do, but I got thrown into doing couples therapy.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I was, not that I don't mean to sound like arrogant, but I was like way out of my league. I was so bad at it. I was emotionally overwhelmed. It was a lot of feelings and anger and volatility in the room working with really angry professional couples.
Wow.
So that sort of inspired me to get more training and help. And I learned that we are in this middle of this love revolution, so to speak, where people, researchers, psychologists, neuroscientists, we're discovering just how connected we all really are. And I learned how to effectively work with couples. And what I found was that this was the most game-changing work that I had ever learned and done. And I had already been, a practicing psychologist at that point. So that's sort of what threw me into really, diving headfirst into the relationship sphere. It was not by choice, but once I sort of started seeing the magic of this work, I was like, wow, there's something here.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so funny is that when I was just getting started, I remember sitting down thinking about, after I graduated from university, I was like, what do I want to do? I always knew that life coaching or some type of strategy work about living your best life was something that I always wanted to do. And so when I was brainstorming business ideas and thinking, how do I really want to move forward in the world and share my gifts and just create and impact people's lives, with my expertise and my advice and my strategic mind, one of the things that I thought I wanted to do was coach people on their relationship. So it's so funny that you said you felt overwhelmed, right, when you started to work with people?
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, and so I thought that that was something that I wanted to move forward in because I've always been super passionate about my relationship. I've been with my man now for over a decade, and that's grown and evolved into something beautiful. But when I was just getting started, I was like, well, who can I coach or test things out as far as like relationship wise type of thing? And it was one of my best friends at the time, and I was like, let's meet at a coffee shop. She was having some problems with her guy. And I remember just her kind of explaining some things about what was going on. And I was like, I knew then, I was like, no, like this should be a non-negotiable, walk away, run as fast as you can. Like we shouldn't even be having this conversation. But it's just interesting. I mean, this is not my profession, but I remember thinking that I wanted to do this and let me just talk to her and see where it goes. And it was just like so overwhelming. So that's my experience with trying to, experiment with, okay, let me see if I can help people nurture their relationships. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm so done. So yeah, no way. So, let me see. So as far as the high achieving people that you work with and people who are in their careers and doing well there, what type of issues do you usually see arise with their partners when they're dedicating their time and attention and they're really trying to move their career forward or their business forward in this case, since, we're talking to entrepreneurs? What type of problems do you see when we are super dedicated to our businesses, but maybe our relationships are not getting the attention that they need? What are some problems that you see come up in a relationship?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of them. I mean, sometimes it's sort of like, the grass grows where you water it, and people grow apart. People sort of, start getting resentful of each other. I see a lot of the times people come to me and they're, discouraged because their partner doesn't necessarily support them in their business. That comes up a lot. Or people have just gotten, really angry at each other. So, when these are kind of the common things that happen. Sometimes people just think, oh, you know what, I've outgrown my relationship, that's it, I'm done. And that may be the case sometimes. Certainly we do grow and evolve, and relationships aren't all meant to be permanent, or
Yeah.
but I see that happens a lot in ways sometimes that can be prevented. So those are common issues that come up. A lot of the times people feel like their significant other is too negative or too practical, or especially in the very beginning, I found with a lot of people who are just starting out with their businesses, and they start, catching wind of all the mindset work that's out there and all of the big thinking type stuff. It's like they start to see the world with fresh eyes and they want to share that with everybody, but not everybody really cares, right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
right. So that can be an issue as well. And they feel like, oh, people don't get me. People feel really misunderstood. So those are just some of the things that come up. Money mindset is an issue that comes up a lot between, entrepreneurs and their partners as well. Just the risk tolerance that, people have to face sometimes, and that they do face, where maybe their partners aren't really on that same plane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know I've heard many stories of entrepreneurs who have partners who are not very supportive, and they could be negative. But, and I'll speak on my experience with this, but what are some things that we as entrepreneurs can do to sort of get our partner on the same page? So not necessarily let's make them supportive, but what are some things that we can do to get them to kind of see things in a new way and be a little bit more supportive?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because I'm listening to Gary Vaynerchuk's new book, Crushing It. And I love his stance on all of this. And he basically says at one point, he's like, you can't care what other people think about you, right? Friends and family, don't let that stop you, except for your spouse, right?
Yeah.
You got to talk to your spouse about this stuff. And so two of the common things that I see that happens or two pieces of advice I'll give you if you're feeling like your spouse is not supportive. The first is to look in the mirror. Your spouse is often kind of reflecting back to you a lot of what you're putting out there. And a lot of times, when you're trying new things, is sometimes you might not fully believe in yourself. You might be scared. You might not have super amounts of confidence or faith. And a lot of times people will look to their partners for that kind of, go get them and go and faith and strength. when they're just going to sometimes reflect back to you your weakest link, so to speak, or
Yeah.
your own insecurity or lack of belief in yourself. And it's sort of not because they don't believe in you or because they don't support you, but because they want to protect you. And a lot of the times, if that's what you're projecting, even if you're not completely aware of it, but if you're coming from a place of, needing that support and needing that permission, right? That's sometimes what's going to be reflected back, which can look like a lack of support or oh, that's stupid, don't do that, and it's in a way to kind of prevent you from falling on your rear end, right? So that's one thing that I see a lot of, or that I have seen a lot of. But more commonly, what I find is that a lot of times people go full on in their business, and just like you were saying, you really put it requires you to put everything into it. And it can be all consuming, and it's a labor of love, and it's exciting, and all of these feelings that we have toward our businesses, right? I mean, these are quite similar to what you might have for a romantic partner at some point in the beginning of a relationship, where you're in that kind of infatuation place. You can stay up all night with it. Yep. You can, except it doesn't talk back. And if you're doing it right, it pays you, right? So this can be a little bit of an addiction. And so a lot of the times and I've seen this with a lot of people I've worked with, people will come to me with relationship issues when it's that, your partner's not supporting you in business, perhaps because they're completely getting your scraps. They're getting crumbs because you are all out in your business. And so does that mean you have to kind of like find a balance or spend equal time with your business and equal time with, no, it's not about time, but it's about really making sure that they know that they are a priority as much, if not more so, than your business.
Oh,
and
yes.
Don't forget the importance of that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I remember a few years ago, I was working on my couch, and I had like pillows stacked up to kind of like have like a desk. When I'm sitting down on the couch, the pillows are stacked up, so my laptop's like right here. And my man Ray, he's so sweet. So for Christmas, he had went online and then got this lap desk pillow. It was like a desk with a pillow on it, right? Yeah. And so I had been using that. And then shortly after, I loved it so much, I was like, oh, I can lay in the bed and work on this, right? So it was getting late into the night, and then he kind of noticed that, this lap desk and this work, I mean, I'm not sure if that was a good idea, because now she's taking it everywhere. And he's always been so supportive, and there's just been times where he's like, hey, are you done? It's like 2:00. Are you going to call it a wrap now? Oh, I'm almost finished. And not that I saw any decline in support, but he was just always kind of peeling me away from my laptop. Hey, coming in my office, I think it's time, you need to take a break. Aren't you hungry? And I'm like, I'm fine. But something that's helped me, especially in the way beginning with my relationship, is being open and sharing the vision, and really sitting my partner down and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing, and this is kind of how I want to move forward. And I've always been very transparent in my business model and what that means for my lifestyle, and also how I wanted to grow and where he kind of fit in. So that's something that I've been, doing, just being very transparent. And also, I love what you said about making your partner a priority. And I've always said that too. Even sometimes in the very beginning when I was just starting, I was like, you're my number one, and it was true. But I know sometimes my verbal words were not aligning with my actions. So once I've kind of, if I'm telling someone, you are my main priority, you are here, business is here, and all that other stuff, I noticed that sometimes it wasn't aligning. So I had to just do a little bit of work, but I noticed that once my actions caught up to what I was saying, my relationship just improved, and it became a lot more fun. So yeah.
And I love what you said about selling him the vision, so to speak, not selling it to him, but if you can't sell it to your partner, right, how are you going to really, sell it to the world, right? And it's not selling it to him, but letting him know that, you're coming from a place of groundedness, empowerment, confidence, clarity, right? You said, here's my business strategy. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm working on. It's a lot easier to support. And here's where you fit, and you're important too. It's a lot easier to support that than to have your partner just off to the side, doing something all the time, really brushing you off, right? And I love the way you mentioned that he's saying, hey, are you gonna, he was kind of coming at you softly and a little bit, I mean, maybe not saying like, oh, I miss you, not like super vulnerably, but softly, as opposed to how some people might come, more frustratingly, I don't know what the word is, but you know what I mean, from a place of frustration, I should say, or anger or resentment or hostility, which again, we all have our own emotional process and ways of handling it. And it can be a lot harder to see that frustration from a partner as really a longing underneath that. So it's important to, I think, look, if you're feeling like hostility or resentment, what is that about? It's often an armor, a coating of something a lot softer.
Yeah, I love that. And something that came to mind as you were speaking was that I think that in some cases we need to pull back. At least what's helped for me is pull back, wanting that like 100%, like you were mentioning in the beginning, support, I support you, go for it. I think for me, my partner has been one of the biggest support systems in believers. But I know in the very beginning, I was looking for that validation. Like I'll tell him this very exciting idea. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, like I think it can work out great. And I'm like, okay, can I get a little bit more enthusiasm? Yeah, like I'm expecting him to say, yeah, it's the best idea I've ever heard. Go out there and kill it. I know you're gonna do it, babe. But yeah, and then it's just like, yeah, and then so for me, I'm really sensitive when it comes to people's like energetic energy. It's like then I'm like, okay, do you not support this idea? And he's like, no, go ahead. It's great, but it's just like I was really looking for him to be as enthusiastic. And it's funny because my energy levels are always so freaking high, and he's just kind of like, like he can be excited, but he's not like me excited. And I was kind of expecting him to be like at the same level. And so that's not with that situation. But I think that, like you said, to look in the mirror and see what we're projecting out. And for me, joining a mastermind or creating a group of women where I can come to with that type of thing to say, hey, ladies, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And then some may be like, go for it. Like, I see where you want to take it. And then some others may be like, I'm not sure about that. I think you need to do some research, so it was a great balance, but I wasn't always looking for that type of confirmation or just go out there and get it, from him. And so I think kind of balancing, or at least kind of balancing what you're getting from your partner and not expecting them to be everything in your business and life. And that could be a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge mistake people make, especially in the beginning, is to look toward their partner for that kind of support. And a lot of times, I think, at least I found that, and this is my mother-in-law actually said this, every relationship consists of a dreamer and a practical one, right? And a lot of the times, us dreamers are matched with, like you said about your man, who's kind of more like, middle of the road, just more calm, more of an anchor, right? Where you're just like, right?
Yes.
And you're not going to get that same kind of enthusiasm from an anchor, and that's okay. You're not supposed to. And so, like you mentioned, to surround yourself with fellow dreamers and visionaries who, you can get that kind of support from, and that kind of have that kind of energy with, and also have your relationship be something separate from your business. They're not the same.
Yes.
So important.
Yeah, I love the fact that you can have that separation. And I think knowing what type of relationship you have and having that vision for your relationship is also very, very important. So some people feel like, I don't want to really mix the two because I want my relationship here and I want to be able to have that time with him. And then this is business mode. Some people enjoy that. And then some other people enjoy, hey, I want him to be a little bit more involved. And for me, that's kind of how it's grown. In the beginning, I just wanted that separation. Hey, this is business time. And then this is us time. And I didn't want to kind of intrude with all my business ideas because I'm very excited all the time about it. And so I had that separation, but I think now it's evolved. And when I had him be a little bit more involved in my business, I saw my relationship change a little bit because he was now part of the vision and felt kind of included. So he's always been supportive. But when I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, yeah, I'll give my opinion on that. And I'm like, okay. And I just kind of saw that he was like a little bit more excited. Oh, I'm doing this now. And then he's like, oh, that's great. And so I just noticed a little bit of involvement can go a long way. And even like years ago when I would like write my newsletter and then I say, hey, can you proofread this for me? And then he's like, sure, I'll, and he just being a part of it, it was really sweet process. But so I think it's important to know what works for you in your business and your relationship. Maybe it's not a good idea to have, your partner involved, or maybe it could be. So yeah.
But what you said too about clarity of the vision and the roles and the boundaries and knowing what's what, I mean, that's just so important, especially for couplepreneurs, right? When you're running a business together with your partner. What's your relationship? What's the business? It can get really, really muddied up in there. So being very clear about roles, boundaries, all of that can really save you a lot of distress in the future.
Yeah, all right. So the last time that we talked, we were bringing up, we had this kind of funny sub conversation about our businesses being like our baby, right? And I was kind of saying like how at times we can feel like we're having an affair, right, with our businesses because maybe, we're neglecting our partners and we're showing the business all this love, like you said, a labor of love. And I've heard many entrepreneurs refer to their business as their baby, as they're birthing new offers, they're creating new things, putting together, things to launch. And something that you said that I thought was so funny was that although that's our baby, right, our significant other, our partner, that's not their baby. So they're not the baby's father, they're baby daddy, right? And I just love the aspect of that. Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic, the fact that, we can be so passionate about our work and we can't put that responsibility necessarily on our partners?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I like to talk about business sometimes more as an affair or an addiction, as opposed to that baby, right? That baby that you're co-parenting and that you're bringing up and that you're loving together, and that's part you, part them, or whatever, you know what I mean? So because we can be so driven and because it's rewarding and, like I said a little while ago about how infatuated that we are with our romantic relationships at first, just as we are with our businesses, it can be this thing that really can take over. And if we're not careful, and trust me, I'm the first, I remember, I'll never forget, we were in a car, this was a couple of years ago, but the foundation of, healthy relationships is about being accessible, responsive, engaged, all of these things. And the whole family was in a car, we were driving somewhere, and I'm on my phone, right, responding to some Facebook, something or other business, right? And my husband turns to me and he says something. He's driving and I'm on my phone. And I did not hear a word he said, right? I did not say, hey, hang on a second, I'm going to, it can suck you in. And here's somebody who teaches this stuff and who coaches people on this stuff. And I'm caught. Like, he's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not.
Yeah. Hello.
Right. So it can be this thing. It can be this thing that sucks us in. It's this thing that, again, we're stealing away to in the wee hours of the night, almost like an affair, right?
Yeah.
And like you're talking about bringing your laptop and your cozy laptop pillow and laptop desk to bed. And it's like, who's the third party in the relationship here, right? So, and for good reason, we get rewarded for it. It's validated work. I mean, we live in a culture of workaholism anyway, and we're driven and we love what we do, and it's exciting and we're creative, and there's so many awesome things about it. But people forget, and I think this is where I was sort of thrown when I first started doing couples therapy a decade ago. People are thrown about how important our relationships really are. Like, I didn't realize like how significant they are in that, the longest running study of humans of all time that started in 1938 in Harvard. They studied humans over 75 years. And they found that the number one thing that was more related to health, longevity, success, both financial, professional, career success, happiness, everything, it was the quality of your relationships. Mm-hmm. So again, the reason why I'm kind of just putting this all out there is because we don't remember. I mean, at least I know I didn't necessarily know that. And I would go head on into my business. I mean, that's sort of like, I think what a lot of people do is they get head on and it becomes more like this thing that feeds itself in an addictive kind of way, or like this thing that we're kind of stealing away from, or we're hiding because it's like an affair, and it's like, hello, what about me? What about me?
Yeah.
You got to pay attention to your relationship. It's what we need it. We're wired that way as humans. So.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that when we're so in love with what we do, things that we take for granted can be put on the back burner. So if you had a healthy relationship before you started your business, or before you really started to grow and scale, and then you don't give it that attention, it's only natural that things will start to decline. And as far as, that situation that happened in your car and you not being present, I know I've caught myself not being present even at dinner sometimes, and I've done a lot better at having those boundaries and just being mindful that my partner deserves just as much attention as my business, if not more. And that's definitely taken some time to develop with experience and it's really being thoughtful and conscious when it comes to what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how you're doing it, given your partner. But do you have any recommendation or maybe some tips for maybe setting up some boundaries as we start to look at that dynamic between the business and then our relationships, and how we can sort of maybe put a few things in place to make sure that our relationships are getting the attention that it needs?
Yeah, and I think that the word that you used, which is so key, is being mindful about it, being aware. And so in terms of, boundaries or tips, any kind of rules I give may not work for any, I think it is a personalized, unique kind of thing, but first of all, just having conversations, making sure to do that. Jack Canfield, I love this. I heard him on an interview once, and he said, I ask couples to do this too. He says that he has a conversation with his significant other every week. And they say, or his wife, they say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing? Right. Yeah. And that sort of opens up an opportunity to talk about maybe where you can improve things, right? Maybe where each of you can improve things. It gives, the way I talk about relationship problems is that they're like a pebble in your shoe. You don't really recognize them until you've, run for a couple miles, and then you're like, oh, shit. You got it ripped up in a bloody foot, right? Yeah. So to catch those before they start is to sort of maybe set up a parameters with your significant other about having conversations like this. And a great one is to say, how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10, right? If it's at a 6, how can I make it a 7? How can I be better at a 7 for you? And vice versa, right? If you find yourself, always on your phone or on a device. And I think this is true for people beyond just entrepreneurs. This is true for anybody. What are your ground rules around that? Like, are you allowed to use your phone at dinner? Have conversations about, what rules to implement and really honor those. Some people have a digital detox day, right? They say, Sundays or whatever day, Saturday, whatever, right? You don't touch technology. Again, it's a lot easier for some people than others, but I think that, looking into this and really figuring out what works for you is really important. And again, like having a weekly date night, like what are things that you can, make habits in your relationship that you're doing in your business? You're blogging every week, or you're doing this. These are non-negotiables that people who are successful set up for themselves, these discipline things, right? You got to do that in your relationship to make it a no-brainer, because the thing, the thing that they say about the jar and the rocks, you put the big rocks in first, right?
Yeah, the sand and
totally. And I think what you said, which sums it up, is that we can easily take for granted things that are going well.
Yeah,
and so to continue to nurture that, and I know in terms of boundaries, I'm not giving a sort of clear answer, but I think it's an important question that every individual has to ask themselves. Yeah. How can I make sure my partner knows that they're a priority? And like you said, actions can speak louder than words sometimes. Are they a priority, right? Are there issues? Are there things that you want to talk about? Like, don't let these things get swept under the rug, because they will not get better on their own without looking at them.
Right. Yes. And something that came to mind when you were talking about having a routine or some type of habit. So for the last 2 years, every single Monday, almost without fail, maybe once or twice, something has gotten in the way, but every Monday, that's usually my day off. And, my partner and I will go to dinner, we'll go for a walk, but we have set that time apart that we know that Mondays, are the day that we connect, have good conversation, go feed the ducks, and just have that moment to ourselves. And I've actually looked forward to that every single week. And of course, we spend time with each other throughout the week. But I know that Mondays is my day, and that's a day that we can be together without interruption. So that's something that I've done and can possibly work, for people watching, is just to make your relationship a priority. Because the way I see it is, my business is it's going to be there. There's always going to be something for me to do. My to-do list never ends. I'm always launching something new. I'm always trying to up level and do more and be more creative, and that's just demanding more of me. But my partner's here, and he's important, and he deserves more of a priority. And I've always told him, like I've said, that you are really the most important thing. This business is my business and I love it, but you're my partner and my best friend. And I think that having that open line of communication and really setting that boundary or that habit has really helped me a lot in my relationship. So
I love that. Can I ask you,
yeah,
having those Mondays, do you feel like that impacts your business at all, and the energy that you bring to your business?
Yeah, I think so, because I know in the very beginning, I worked a lot, and I'm saying like 10-hour days. I love what I do, and I can literally sit at my laptop for like 6 hours without getting up. And my partner would always be like, how do you do that? Like, I can work for 30 minutes and I'm squirming in my chair, but it's just like, I can be glued to my laptop. And at the beginning, I felt like I was sucked in the business, but that I wasn't living a fabulous life. And so bringing that mindfulness about, hey, there's more to my life than business. And my relationship has always been a number one priority. And I feel like having that Monday keeps me grounded. It again reaffirms that there's so much more to joy in life than my business. Although that impact is there and I make a difference in people's lives and I love my work, I love my relationship too. And I feel like once I have that time and that Monday's over, like I said, we spend time during the week, but then it's just like I hop into my work week Tuesday, and it's just like I just felt I nurtured my relationship. So when other parts of my life are taken care of, I think I approach my work more grounded. I feel like I can connect better with my audience. I feel like I've filled up my cup, right? If you think about that energy, nurturing my life, and then what flows over is what I give back to the world. And I think that for me personally, my relationship, I will always be one of the most important things in my life. And just to demonstrate that every week, it really does fill me up. And I think it does impact my business in small ways and big ways.
I love it.
Love it. Yeah. So when it comes to our relationship and putting that attention there, in your opinion, what type of impact does that make? So many people could feel like I've got my business here and my relationship here. And when I work on my business, it grows. But when I work on my relationship, things are good. But in what type of ways will nurturing our relationship impact the business that maybe we don't see? So I just gave you how I feel, but what do you think about that? Can our relationships and nurturing that really have an impact on our work in the world?
100%. And I'm so glad you asked that question. I won't even share my opinion on it. I'll share some research that's been done
All right.
So there's a pretty groundbreaking study that was done that showed how when you take care of your relationship, it actually affects the way your brain processes pain and fear.
Wow.
I could go into details on that, but the fact of the matter is that we are wired for connection. We need to know that there are at least one person. There's at least one person that's got our backs, no matter what. This is basically our first concern is taking care of those relationships. And when you're in business for yourself, you've got to be brave. You've got to be bold. You've got to be resilient. You've got to put yourself out there and face rejection and all of these things that are real threats in our brain, biologically felt threats to our survival. We've got to be able to get over that and do it anyway. And so I think by making that clear and putting that front and center is important. But when you have a solid relationship. And again, I think romantic relationships demonstrate this very, very strongly because they are so front and center and so primary. If you don't have a romantic relationship, friendships, family, it's about connection. It's about social connection. But the study demonstrated that when, you know, women were put in an fMRI machine and they were given a small shock in their foot, when they were in a distressed marriage and they were holding the hands of their significant others, they basically got a shock on their foot and their brain lit up with fear and their brain lit up with pain. This is a study by Sue Johnson and James Cohn. And the same thing happened when they held the hands of their significant others with whom they had a distressed relationship. They worked on their relationship. They went through effective couples therapy called emotionally focused couples therapy. And they basically got to a place where their relationship was in a much better place. And they went through the same exact experiment in the fMRI machine, which can look at the brain. When they got the shock on their foot, their pain centers did not light up as much. Your brain literally responds to social and physical pain the same way. And the fear center of their brain was also not as affected. So what does that tell us? That tells us that when we have strong social support, and you mentioned a mastermind. I mean, I think this is important too, to surround yourself with people who get you, who can support you. When we have that, right, we can take distress, we're more resilient, we're braver, we're bolder. I mean, there's just so much to it. And that's just one study that shows that. So what that means is, I think as entrepreneurs, again, we're already people who like to take more risks than most, but you can do that in a much more effective way. You can, you know, get up faster when you fall down, because we all have to fail forward. So those are just some of the impacts that having a strong relationship has. The other piece, though, is that few recognize just how draining it is when they're in a bad relationship until they start to when they're free from that. And I don't mean just necessarily shutting the door and leaving. That's sometimes the answer. But when they improve that, people don't really recognize, at least in my experience, people don't necessarily recognize the significant energy drain that having a bad or distressed or dysfunctional, whatever you want to call it, relationship has. So when you patch that up, it's like you've got more energy. You're much more, you know, like you fill your cup on Mondays, right? So that's, again, some more, I think, more positive stuff that can come from having a stronger relationship.
Yeah. And I love that you took it beyond our partners, because in reality, we are friends, you know, and we have other relationships besides our partners. And if you don't have a partner, or if you're looking for a partner, these are things that you can implement and you can think about before you get into a relationship. Or if you have a girlfriend or, you know, best friend, and even your business can wedge in between those relationships also. And so the same things really would apply. And I love that you brought up the science behind it, because I think that's so important to realize that those relationships in stressful situations, I mean, can mean all the difference. And as far as the stress and the anxiety and the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship in general, I know for me, my partner, I mean, has been one of the biggest assets, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but has been one of the biggest assets. And sometimes I would call him in the morning and say, hey, you know what? This is a disaster. I created something last night. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I've got this all wrong. I'll call you back later. Just wanted to give you an update. Okay. I'm sure he's like, I'm sure you're going to figure it out. Relax. You know, I said, I'm always here. And he's like, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry. And then I'll call him maybe midday. Oh, I'm sorting it out. You know, I can see clear a little bit, you know, but how are you? End of the night, I've got this. I don't know why I was calling you freaking out. I understand this now. Anytime I do this in the future, remind me that, you know, to you know, keep that in mind. You know, if I ever go off on that tangent or feel confused, just remind me of these two little things. And then he'll take little mental notes. But it's just like to kind of go through that each day. It's not like that every day, but I can tell you once or twice a month, there's like a freaking out thing. It's just like, uh-oh, you know, and my partner's the first person that I call, and he's been so considerate and so compassionate and really patient. So I feel very fortunate in that matter. But I think it boils down to to what your relationship is like. Some partners may not want to have all of that energy just laid on them. And then if that's the case with your relationship, that's why it's important to have other people who can support you, who don't mind you kind of doing a brain dump on them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowing where your partner stands with that. I mean, and I hope that you show this interview to your significant other, because it just sounds like you guys have such a strong relationship and you've always known how important that is to you. And it's, you know, that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And so lastly, I want to talk about how our partners can become an asset. So let's say we, get very clear on what we want our relationship is like, or first we do the mindset work, right? Because we talked about how we got to look in the mirror and what we're projecting out, we can be projecting back. So once we kind of put that into perspective, and then, we talk to our partners maybe once a week and say, hey, where are we at? And I love that idea I meant to mention, because when I work with someone and their business has completely taken over their life and their relationship has gone to, their health has gone to, everything's just like out of whack, the first thing I have them do is an audit of their relationship with their finances, their health, their emotional and physical, in their relationship with their family and friends. So I love that you said that, just having that open conversation with your partner and saying, hey, where do we stand 1 to 10 and how can we improve it? So once we do something like that and sort of audit where things are, and then have an open conversation about expectations and boundaries, once we kind of got all that groundwork figured out and we start to implement little things, how can our partners become an asset? Like, what is that effect? Can we see, are they more supportive, or maybe are they more willing to help? Or, I'm so excited to hear this, because I think many people need to hear how, if they were to just nurture your relationships with your partner with the same dedication, if not more than you do with your business, that person, your partner, can become a supporter. So how can that change?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And people are often surprised that, oh, wow, it's really that, it's actually kind of simple, right? In terms of just showing them that they matter and they make a difference. And again, I think for everybody, whether or not you want to quote unquote retire your significant other and have them be involved in the business, I mean, that's obviously, like you said before, a very personal decision. But if you're feeling like your partner's not necessarily supportive right now, or, you're questioning things, you're wondering if you're outgrowing your relationship, right? Again, after you do that mindset work and you start nurturing things, you'd be surprised. They can become your biggest supporter and your biggest ally. And you're, all of these things, like the person that you call when you're freaking out about something to kind of help anchor you. And again, with everybody, it's different. And like you said, sometimes your partner might not necessarily want to hear you brain dump, but your relationship is taking care of your relationship. I mean, we hear about self-care all the time, and drinking your green juice and doing your yoga and all of this stuff, right? Your relationship has been shown, according to many studies, to be as important of an element in that self-care routine as any of the others. So when you can put some of that in, and you actually get that back. You get that back not only with how your brain responds to fear and stress, like we just said, but also your partner can have a total change of attitude in terms of how they feel about your business, and how whether they might want to share an idea, or like you said, proofread an email or that kind of thing. I mean, who doesn't want that kind of support? I found too that a lot of times couples are very complementary in terms of the way they process information, right? So if any of you guys have read Rocket Fuel, it's a great book where there's like the visionary and more of the integrator who can kind of see more of the details. Now, I think a lot of the entrepreneurs out there are more of the visionary kinds, right?
Yep.
But you'd be surprised many times your partner, and again, I'm not saying to necessarily employ them or get them involved, especially if they don't want to, but they might want to step up and help out, So that's another thing. But I think more than any of the practical things that they can do for your business is that emotional piece, that safety, that security, that foundation that we all need from somebody to be able to get out there and explore the world in a more daring and effective way.
Yeah. And I think, as the research shows, when you have someone who is supporting you, it makes the blow or the emotional drama of just going out there and taking risks. It makes it a little bit easier to deal with because you have that person who supports you unconditionally. And I think that's such an invaluable piece of our business that we don't really think of our partner as that asset that can be a business asset. Doesn't mean he has to be working in it, but they still are an asset. And yeah, I think you put that beautifully. So thank you.
Yeah, even just one more piece on that, even Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, right? Which every entrepreneur reads. All of the successful people he talked to, now obviously we're talking, white men in the 1930s, whatever it was written, but they're all backed by white straight men, I should say. They're all backed by the support of a woman, right? I mean, that's sort of a quote. I mean, I'm not quoting it directly, but most of them that he studied had that kind of unwavering support, whether it was Abe Lincoln's mother or, a wife, a partner, so it goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having this insightful conversation, because I think that as high achieving performers or high achieving business women, or even if you don't have a business or you're just a professional person who is dedicated to their career and want to take it to the next level and don't want to leave your relationship behind and let that, deteriorate. I think it's so important that we look at our relationships and see, how can I strengthen that along with my business, or how can my partner, the person that I'm choosing to spend my life with, become an asset? And I don't see many people having this conversation really at all. I don't see many people talking about the challenges that we face as entrepreneurs as we are growing a business and trying to, especially when you're trying to get it off the ground, because we know it takes time and energy. And for many people, they have that mindset that something has to give, whether that's health, relationships, their sanity, family, and things like that. And I think this is an eye-opening conversation, because now it's no longer a trade-off, right? It's not like, okay, I either have a good business and a failing relationship, or I have a great relationship and a failing business. I think that there's a way that we can nurture both. And when you do spend that time and strengthen your relationship, create, even if it's getting in a new relationship, whether it's creating, maintaining, or nurturing, that has an impact on your work in the world. And I think that that's what you communicated to us today. So if we can just have that mindset that our partners can become that asset, that supporter, and they don't have to resent our businesses, right? They can support us and be that rock for us when we need it. And so, yeah, thank you again. I hope I summed it up of your opinion on the dynamic between our business and our relationships.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to take hours and hours, even just simple texts throughout the day. If you're in the middle of a launch, if you're in the middle of something crazy, just little things, as opposed to just turning your back on it. It can be so important. So.
Yeah. So thank you again for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love having this conversation, and I just love that you're totally on board and that you've been nurturing both for so long, and clearly the results speak for themselves. So thank you so much for having me, Noelle.
Yes. So thank you. Now we'd love to hear from you. Head over to noellebloom.com and leave a comment. I'd like to know, what type of challenges have you faced in your relationship with either starting, growing, or even scaling your business? What are some things that you've put into practice to maybe help alleviate some of those challenges? Or you can let us know, what is your biggest insight from this conversation? Did you learn anything new that you can implement in your relationship to make that your relationship a priority, just as you do your business? I'd love to hear from you. If you like this video, subscribe and make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. As you're out there doing your work in the world, remember to have fun, live free, and feel fabulous. I'll see you next time on Bloom TV. Bye. Are you on the VIP list? If not, you're missing out. Head to noellebloom.com now and sign up to get free exclusive content to help you create a business and live fabulous.